Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome
the technician. 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 And they call him the technician.
Act normal.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Technician Podcast. Today, I've got my brother, Kristelle Laidlaw, today. So excited for this one, man. How are you feeling?
I can't stop. You had to ask me to be normal before. I'm like, what the fuck is normal?
What is normal? What's weird? We look at the etymology of wordings right now.
Oh, man, I'm just like, I'm so comfortable being the fucking weird one.
Weird's cool, though.
Weird's like, when you accept being weird, there's like, there's no need to transition to make people understand you anymore.
Don't have to put a fucking mask on, do you?
No label. You know, like this, just going through these fractional times where you try and like fit some type of narrative and you end up building your own anxiety around so much like years of like, where do I fit? Where does this? Where's that? And it's like, man, beautiful lady, woman, child, just, you know, be yourself.
Well, the word weird is basically like a person's destiny. If you look at some of the etymology of it and where it actually came from. So, again, we start off with just literally questioning everything, right? And as you just said, if you are just you don't then, like, I know a lot of people in my past and myself especially, I would love the fact that I could turn up to different friend groups and be like them, when really I just wasn't being me ever.
Oh, that speaks volumes to me. I think, like, straight away that takes me back to the gratefulness of being taken around the world as a child. But, you know, mum and dad, we like moved to so many different locations. You know, I'm grateful enough to live in Spain and Barcelona when the Olympics were on, and in England, in England and things like that. But you had to be, like, show up and try and be your best self to fit into. You had no idea, you know, and like it actually resonates with me quite well to try and. There was a program a few years ago called like The Pretender, where he could be really something that he wanted to be quite quickly, fit into any group of friends, and it was like, you know, he could be a doctor, he could be anything, and that was like.
Was that like a TV show or something?
Yeah, it was actually called The Pretender. I remember watching it, and he would like go through these phases where he would just fit into everything, and I was like, it kind of resonated with me then. Yeah,
because do you feel like that was also you at some point where you were just flowing in and out of different friend groups, or say you would be different if you're around men compared to how you were around women, for example?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just showing up differently. That whole, again, I say narrative of like, what is a man? What is a man? How do you articulate yourself in a group of men? Who has the best My Cat's Blacker story? Who has the, you know, that whole ideology of, and it sounds so like, I'll use the word toxic, and I'm sure it's going to come up quite a lot, but, you know, the body count, how many girls have you had, like, you know, tell all those like stories. I look back at it now and it's a learning curve, but it's still so fucking cringy.
Isn't it to think also that the men that are within that circle having that conversation, knowing now what we know, right? When people are doing the best they can with what they know, do you think a lot of them actually want to get in that conversation, or they're just doing it because they think that's what you're supposed to say?
Yeah, I think there's a massive like calling around that, like, I'm supposed to talk like this. I'm supposed to like tell the story, and, you know, and I think what came up in the retreat when I said to you guys, like, I've had a very small table since I moved back from Sydney in March last year. I've really kind of come into my own to know that it's okay to not go to places where I'm in those environments.
Like partying and stuff?
Yeah, especially. And, you know, like, I don't have the time, energy or effort to go to those lengths to make myself available energy-wise. And since doing that, I go back to, and I'm sure if the beautiful Waz watching this, it was just like, took myself out of the environments around drugs and alcohol I wanted to go to, and it just everything started to show up for me.
Did you go to one of Wire's events?
Yeah, I have done, like in the last 18 months, I've done like the Amend with Wire's level 1, level 2. I've done 2 King Warrior programs with him because I was lucky enough to win a King Warrior program, win the level 2, which was like, yeah, just the way. And I got to speak into, I was humbled at level 2 by a 5'4" blonde girl who just told me to shut the fuck up. If you're not gonna, I hype everyone up. I do it now, but I'm hyping myself up in my best self. But she was like, you are seriously like, you need to close off because you are not hyping yourself up anywhere near these people. And if you're not going to show up for yourself, it's not being authentic when you're doing it for others. And I was just like sitting in the corner like, just like, what the fuck is that?
What the hell?
Like,
was she a facilitator or something?
Yeah. I mean,
right.
I chatted to her a bit later on, the beautiful Lee, sorry, her name is, and just I was like, do I trigger you? And she goes, yeah, you do. And just walked off, and I was like,
I love that.
That was actually my first conversation around someone admitting that I triggered them, me having to be okay with it, and then deal with the after effect of it.
Imagine for the first time in a long time being confronted with the actual truth when you ask for it. In such a confrontational situation, well, not confrontational, but such a like, holy fuck, they just said yes to what I just asked, even though you knew if they were going to say yes, it's actually quite an uncomfortable situation.
All like, hats off to the Amend crew, like all of the boys and beautiful queens that run that. Like, for my first time stepping into it, and as you well know, like everything with me is just either 100 or 0, and I stepped into it and I didn't quite know what I was getting myself into. Like level 1 made to stand. I stood up in front of like 75 men, and Wa was like, "There's a little boy in there, and he just wants to be held." And I was like, "Oh, gee!" And it's even now, and that's like Jay, because Jay was like,
Jay there when you did it?
Jay's been a massive part of my development in regards to kind of like who I was following, because, and I'm going to tell this story. I actually rang Jay 2 years ago, and I was like, "Bro, I got to apologize to you, man. You were so fucking happy, and I didn't believe you. You just showed up, and you were just this. I couldn't deal with how happy you were claiming you were.
Always smiling and stuff.
Yeah, and then I rang him like, bro, because I'd just done the level 1, the level 1 course, and I rang him like, bro, like, I'm so sorry, man. Like, I feel a little bit of what I saw in one of the videos that I originally was like, you can't be that fucking happy. No fucking way. Like, nah. And then I did the level 2, and the level 2 is the opposite to level 1. So the level 1's like hugs, like cold water, journaling. The level 2 is like triggering you, and I was not prepared. Like, I made sure I was early, and Juan knows I always run late. So he got this guy with a mask to hold a sign up saying, "You're late." And I was like, I'm not fucking late. Like, I'm not late. Like, and yeah, just the whole dynamic of that course just changed my life again. And they all have. And, you know, if I think I heard, so I've actually been called like a workshop whore, I think I was called. And I step into that. I say I fucking am. Because in 18 months of my life, I've turned 38 years of fucking bullshit around. And like I said to you when I walked in, when you asked me how I was, I don't have an answer to that, because it's just peaceful.
Well, dude, you went all in at the retreat we held. Like the Heart-Led Warrior. You were the epitome of someone who, like you said, it's like go or woe. And you would just go the whole time. Even at one point, saw you laying out the mattress in the rain, just feeling it all. Like it was cool. And clearly you got from it what you needed.
Yeah, I did. And like it's to step into it. It's like the work is. It's not easy. Like, and by no means are you going to ever enjoy any part of it, because if you like, what's the like metaphor? I suppose does love a good metaphor. You know, you're unraveling all this learned ideologies of self, behavior, you know, from your mum or your dad, whether, you know, you've been around toxic environments or like too much love environments, and you've got to start to support yourself. Like, you know, it's just a matter of like, it's when you start to see the same toxic bullshit coming your way, and you've just managed to pick up some tools from the level 1, the retreat, King Warrior, or even like to step into it. Like the Uncut Man with Michael Cooper was when I found out I had like a 25-year porn dopamine addiction. Like, I don't know which camera I look at, but that's a 25-year porn addiction to dopamine because of ADHD and me chasing that little hit of like, it's not a hormone release, like just that dopamine. Always, and I didn't like in any way believe I was demoralizing women or I was like sexualizing women. I was just chasing that constant release of dopamine.
Just that little bit of feel good.
A little bit of feel good, and then, just changing to that, and then obviously the retreat, and then opening up to the boys about it, and then finding out that, like, I wasn't alone.
Oh, dude, we could speak on that right now because I feel like that's actually one of, if not the most important talk to happen for men now. Like I did a video not long ago, and it started with porn, pokies, and the pub. And had a couple of older mates be like, fuck, that sounds like a good Friday night. And look, I wasn't sitting here judging anyone that does those things. I was speaking into the abuse of it. I was speaking into the poor blokes or women that may get caught up in doing those things all the time to cover up the shit, right?
Oh, that whole coping mechanism.
Yeah, like I love a few beers and stuff. I might have a slap on the pokies once every couple of months, like with my missus or whatever. So I'm not sitting here judging anyone, but I really feel like it's a conversation that isn't talked about enough.
No.
And considering how open you were at the retreat about it, that really opened it up for the other men there to be able to be like, nah, dude, I hear you. Like, been there before. Like, how much does it ruin relationships?
Oh, like even like one of the boys there, obviously will go without names. Like, he was there Friday night, heard me talk about it. He told me that he spoke to his queen about it, stopped watching it, and then when I saw him on the Sunday, like, and again, like he had said, bro, I think you fucking saved my relationship. You know, when I did stop and I allowed the build up, you could say, and I allowed that sexual energy in myself to resonate and to really kind of climb to a new dilemma, what actually changed for me was my love languages changed. I wasn't like words of affirmation, quality time, and acts of service. It just made this massive 180, and I can say that like physical touch for me now is honestly like, it lights me up like a sunrise. It's just the most amazing feeling when you've just got someone that knows how to touch you, and you've stepped away from that constant release of sexual tension. Because I think the biggest catalyst of it is that we think, oh, fuck it, I can't sleep, I'll just rub one out. Oh, I can't do this, I'll just rub one out, feel good. But like, if you actually step into why you're feeling how you're feeling, and then transition through and retain it, after a couple of days, you just like, you start to look at your girl differently. And I can tell you right now, just if you're listening to this or watching this, just lay off your dick for a week, and then look at you, and then when your missus walk past you in the kitchen and catch a whiff of her.
It's different.
Oh my
God, man.
And I tell you what, she won't get out of your arm's reach, you know, like it. And I think, and another thing as well, I will step into is like, it also changed like my understanding of how I had sex as well. I mean, I always like had done a bit of research, because I do believe that men have like, touch me here, and we're done. But with like women or beautiful queen in general, like there's like 300 or 400 switches and they change daily. But if you just listen to her, and if you just take the time to feel her energy and start at places that you probably wouldn't think, you'll find that the end result will be a lot better than what you ever thought possible.
100%, bro. And even to the point of asking, communicate. Literally communicate what you like, what she likes, have the conversation.
The beautiful Shan, I shared something on Instagram a couple of days ago about, like, I went out for dinner with a friend of mine, and she was telling me, like, and we're very, very open, like, I've known her for quite a long time, and she's like, oh, I'm seeing this guy, and he just like, it's not the X on the controller. you know, like you don't hit it.
Yeah.
You know, maybe use the left thumbstick and a little less thumb on the button, a little bit more thumb on the thumbstick. And I was like, that's a pretty good metaphor. But, you know, like, and I shared something and Shan messaged me and like, what would I do? And I just said like, if you don't, like, as men, we don't know what we don't know. But if you shut the fuck up, sit in your, like, uncomfortable, swallow your pride and ego and say, hey, babe, like, what works for you? Show me. Dropping into that vulnerability and that sense of surrender, you'll get a girl like you never thought you had before. And then in the carryover effect of that, yeah, well, I mean, obviously the opportunity and the way it can work can be endless. Dude,
and expressing your fantasies as well. You know, like I've found that I've found that talking about...
Just watch like the fax paper just go, just roll off.
Oh, this isn't too bad. Oh my fucking God.
Yeah, babe, 101. What?
You opened this up. Listen to me, woman. It's just like such a beautiful conversation for you to really see where you're at, not only as a couple, but just as human beings. Because, dude, when are we told to do that shit? When are we told that we can actually speak what we're thinking, not to be able to act on it, but just to express it? Because I've found that shame loves secrecy. So the more you keep your shame, which might be a fantasy you believe weird or whatever, a secret, the more you actually get this feeling that you need to express it. So that's why a lot of men and a lot of women may end up doing something that they're going to regret, essentially. Or they shame themselves for thinking that shit. When it's like, man, if you just talk about it, a lot of the time your partner is pretty open to it and you just have the conversation. And you might might not want to do what you actually thought was a fantasy. You just needed to express it.
Yeah, very much so. And that, I think, for me, what comes up there is, like, before I stepped away from drugs and alcohol, like, you do some pretty kinky shit on it because your senses are elevated. Your mind is like where it would be if you just opened up and spoke to, you know, said girl. I think that a lot of what we do, like with drugs and alcohol, is that comfortable gateway where that, like you say, that shame and that guilt and that ego and everything drops away. And you like, that was one thing that came up for me actually, is like alcohol for me, I found myself telling people I loved more. And then I realized that I didn't have to be drunk. You know, like I say to like guys all the time, I'm like, that have had a few beers and I haven't, like fuck, I love you, man. I'm like, dude, it would mean so much more to me because I know you mean it in real life if you weren't drinking. Because as they say, like, drunk words are sober thoughts. And, you know, like and since stepping away from that, I can tell any man in my life that has either been a part of it or even in the short term that I love them for what they are for me in that moment, and I walk away and I have no guilt or shame or no homo about it. You know, like it's you don't need to be drunk to tell someone how you feel.
When did you really start to get into the drugs and alcohol?
It came. So I think I was about just turned 18, and I went on a trip to Byron Bay with my girlfriend at the time, and we went out, and I had a few pills and stuff before, but we went out. I was with her. She wanted to go home. I met kind of a group of people. We started partying, and like I took her home. I went back to the party, and then this group was there, and then the group died away, and I was with this guy. We were having heaps of shots. He gave me a pill, and then before I knew it, I was in a taxi. I was like in and out of consciousness. I was like basically got drugged and raped, and from then, waking up and straight away, the way that he made me feel like it was my problem, just when you say stepping into drugs and alcohol, that's really when it fucking took off for me, because I was just like weeks and weeks of just like literally, like I'd go into my dad's cabinet and I would pour like rocket fuel. Like I would pour everything into one bottle, and from where we lived to the bus stop, I would smash it. I would get myself so drunk, like, and just like, I would find myself like holding back tears on the bus. Like everyone was having fun and just suppression of like trying to deal with this problem that had occurred, and like years and years of like, and it went on for ages, and I like started to blame other things, and then like that's when I really started getting after it, if that makes sense. Like I just started to cope with not coping, like stealing to like get high and just try and just get out of it so much.
Dude, thank you for sharing that. That's big, you know. It's like, especially you'll be perceived by, you know, men, well, the society in general. It's like blokes our size, what we might seem like. We don't talk about vulnerability. We don't talk about us being in a weak moment where we actually felt like a victim, you know, like that sort of stuff. So thank you for sharing that, because that's fucking huge.
Yeah, it's I wondered if I would speak about that when it came into it, but it's kind of hard.
How was that, just speaking that then?
Yeah, I can feel sweat, and I like can feel the uncomfortable feeling. Like I could feel bus rides by myself. I could feel just all the alone times when I'd be by myself, like flood back in, and like I, funnily enough, just like thought of drinking, and like literally, like I suppose at the time, like calling my dealer. But yeah, it's a lot just came up, and actually I just had to think about that. Isn't
it interesting that when we voice something, how real it becomes again? Because it's almost like the unconscious doesn't really process time. It's bringing up so much, which, you know, clearly you feel like you've dealt with a lot of it and you're in a pretty good place, but there's maybe still some stuff there that can be cleared.
I said so obviously there is, but the beautiful thing that I step into with it, and the reason why I say this flower blooms, is if you'd have asked me like a year after or 2 years after, do I wish it never happened, I would have said I would take it back in an instant. But the reason why I am not thankful that it happened, but the way that he was, and the way that he, I guess you could say, at the he was a lot older. I remember, like, with the way the party was going, he just always made me feel so secure, and always made sure I had a drink and everything like that. And it actually showed me a man that I could see so fucking clearly. Like, and when I became a security guard, and that was a massive coping mechanism for me, like, I became a security guard, I could see fucking like 400 out when a guy was doing it. And it wasn't until I really started to people watch, because my observational skills are because of having ADHD and noticing, nothing gets past me in regards to when I'm on the foreman. You know, I remember like one time specifically, I watched a guy pretty much groom a girl for over half an hour, and it played out like it was like a mirror image to me. And when I say, like, do I regret it happening? I've like, know myself, I've at least helped at least 12 girls in my life. Rather, the guys walked out, I'm like, hey man, she alright? He said, just my girl. I said, no, she's not. Because she walked in, I checked her ID, you walked in separately, you don't even know her. And I'd watch his face, and because there's a book out there by Alan Pease called Body Language, write that down, it showed me that this, like, when you hear about particular people like Jordan Peterson talk about weak men, that weakness I saw fucking so predominantly with men who just would come into these environments, and they were a rat when they walked in. I saw the way they worked, I saw the way they moved, and so I don't actually really regret it happening to me and not being able to cope with it. But the actual carryover effect of how I was shown a man, and I remember how he acted, really sticks out for me. And I see it even now, and it's actually quite the way that like men act around women has always been. I can hear it in my voice. I'm starting to get frustrated. Like, I've always been a protector.
Yeah.
And like a gentleman like yourself, like, I don't give a fuck who she is. If she's in public and anyone is going near any girl, or someone is being hurt, I'm fucking right there, and it doesn't matter. Like, harm's way doesn't frighten me.
I like that. I think taking what happened to you and allowing it to empower you to help others isn't a real common thing that happens, bro. A lot of people can take that story and say, I'm a victim for the rest of their life. You know, so think about, not only by you dealing with it the way you did may not have been the best, may not have been the worst, whatever. It served its purpose for you to be here today, right?
He'll, to step into that, not that I need to validate anything about it, but he will never forget. He will never forget me.
Yeah.
Like the way that he made me feel and the way that he...
Had you confronted him?
Not after the fact, but when I kind of... Because I remember being on my stomach and then I blacked out. But I woke up and I just was like... I was in his bed and like he walked in and he was in a towel and he goes, there's a towel in the shower for you, go clean yourself up. And I was like... if I close my eyes, I was like, fuck you. I'm not a piece of meat. Like, what happened? And I went to the bathroom and I felt sore and I was like, I looked at myself in the mirror and I just was like, felt like this thing of tears come to my eyes and I was like, just felt like, if you've ever seen a boulder drop through 10 flights of stairs and hit the ground and stop, that's how my heart felt when it hit my feet. And I turned around and I walked out and I said to him, I was like, what happened? And he looked up and smiled and he goes, you loved it. And I fucking looked at him and I was like, in my head I was like, I think I was like 18 years old. I think even at 18 I was still 6 foot and I'm getting close to like 90 kilos and I was like, I just said, you silly man. And he said, why? And I just remember grabbing the back of his head and I just smashed it into the vanity cabinet. And I walked out and I hit his head so hard that like just blood went all up my arm and I walked out into the lounge room and there were these other people out there and they're like, oh, where's Mark? And I was like, you better call an ambulance. Wiped myself down, put on my pants and walked. And then as I was just walking down the street, this ambulance just went flying past me and I was just like... But the hard part, which breaks my heart to say, was like, it was not actually that moment happened. It was when I told my mum. And I just like remember watching her like, her heart like just, it was like, she still calls me a little boo-boo. She was like just her little boo-boo just had been taken advantage of. And I was like, that was the heartbreaking thing for me, was telling my mum. And I was just like, even to this day, I think that probably hits me harder, that it was the moment she realised that she couldn't protect me anymore. But we worked through that like quite a lot. I mean, she went into like her alpha masculine and fucking went down. She found out like everything about him, all these things. She said, what do you want to do, Christopher? And I said, nothing. Like I believe that, like I said, he'll never forget. I don't really hold much resentment to it. Like I can't hold any resentment or negativity to it, because if I do, like that age-old saying, like it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Like,
yeah, it doesn't really serve a purpose anymore, does it?
Nah, not at all. But like it's like, as I say, the blooming flower out of it was like, I remember with my memory just everything so clearly leading up to the moment where I blacked out, that it's unfortunate to say or very demoralizing, but men, when they get into that like fucking twisted mode, they are all the same. There is no difference.
You see that same look on their face?
It's like watching someone it's like watching like the scientist watch the rat and forgive me for like I suppose you'd say like objectifying women like that, but watching like the mouse in the maze, and it's that look, and I just know it so well. So
is it a lot more common than people think?
Yes, it is. A lot more, and I've actually I've had girlfriends over the years that have cried to me and told me that that's what happened to them, and it's actually quite interesting for them to hear my side when I explain to them that it's happened to me too. It's a like, I think it does happen to men a lot more than we think, because it's the like predators, they don't give a fuck like who they get. They've got like, at the time I was like I'm still a handsome motherfucker, but at 18 years old, like a good looking kid who was very, very vulnerable, and that's what I was preyed on. He didn't care like about anything to do what could come after the fact. He just had an agenda, and it just fucking like, Yeah.
It's interesting, bro. You've actually just brought up a weird memory for me that I've completely forgotten about. Is that you're right? I think it also gets normalized if it happens to a man and it is a woman that takes advantage, where it's like it's not as bad, but like straight up, same thing. Young, bad place mentally. Like I was in severe depression, anxiety, and that sort of thing at that stage. Fresh going out, fresh single. Yeah, this older chick, she would have been like, I reckon 7, 8 years older than me. As much as I may have been kind of aware of it, I also know I was severely, severely drunk. And not to really be aware of what was happening. Yeah, wow. It's funny that you telling that story has brought up that memory. Because it's almost like, has that played out in some way in any form of my life with sexuality or, things that I've believed about people? It's interesting. Wow. Okay. Thank you for sharing. I see you. I hear you. I love you and thank you.
Love you too, man.
But, guys, this is the sort of conversations that need to be had, right? Showing that two large men.
Oh, it's like if you don't watch it or you see it, like there'd be over like a quarter of a ton of body weight between you and I. And like even as I sit today at 6'4" and 115 kilos, like it doesn't get any easier. And things for whether you're a 65 kilo female, you just know that like it's just no point holding on to it. And if I want to, I can close my eyes and I can be in any 1 second of that environment, but I'm at peace with it because like what goodness does it serve me to hold on to it? Because as you said earlier, like I refuse to believe that I'm a victim of anything. But I mean, could I play the victim card? Probably, but fuck, like what is that going to serve me? Like fucking like, for me, I understand that people have this victim mentality where they feel comfortable and that's their coping mechanism. But for me, I like associate victim mentality with like lack of drive, lack of understanding, lack of like, I want to be successful. And for me, victim mentality is the handbrake to success. And I refuse to let that whole bullshit carry me or be like the driver of the wheel to take me any other direction than where I'm headed.
Love that. You really do love your analogies and stuff, eh?
I do, yeah. I think
the metaphors are sick.
Oh, I love like metaphors, analogies, any type of comparison.
Yeah, which is great. But it's like, as you just said, allowing him also to have that power, it lets him win ultimately, and allowing you to use that energy of like, fuck you, the passion, the desire, the drive. It's actually segueing into now what you're doing in life, right? With the way you show up daily. I know how hard you fucking work, man. So knowing that
Credit
what you're
to my
doing.
parents for that one. Thanks, Mum. Thanks, Dad.
Shout out, Mumsy and Dadsy. What was it in you that then shifted to, because what you're doing now compared to your ultimate desire with B-Strap, which is an awesome product, brand, everything you're doing with it, right? How did you end up at this point where you wanted to be that guy that was doing something like that? Because have you always had like that entrepreneurial spirit, or?
Yeah, like I to step into that, I was asked that question the other day, and I remember when I was in New Zealand, I think I was like, I must have been like 11, and we went down the beach and we got these like little, like they're called like cotton balls, and they grow out of these like plants on the beach. Anyway, we got like 4 or 5 of them, dyed them different colours, wrapped them in like this wrapping, pulled the thing and went around and sold them for 50 cents each. And as soon as that like realization, there's always been that hustle. Always. Like in my current situation, I don't think in my whole life I can think back to where I didn't have at least 2 to 3 streams of income. And obviously with my ability to spend money and through the lack of knowledge around money, I've always had beautiful material things. But, the idea that I could have probably hustled harder if I'd have known more about money. I think back, imagine if we'd have had like, the knowledge around e-commerce and marketing when we were younger that kids have got these days, where things might be. But yeah, I definitely do. I love, like, the brain doesn't stop. Whenever something's going on, or there's like a weather event, I think of how things can be designed better, or I'm like, I just so happen to streamline the idea of a sewing machine.
Is it something again that comes from your parents, or was it like your environment you were in? Being in New Zealand,
my grandmother, bless her, she was very, very. I don't know what the term would be, but when someone like uses both sides of their brain, she would have a picture upside down and she would paint it the right way up. She would have these cue cards in the room I was in from A to Z with all these different animals, and she understood like that I was not like the other kids having like ADHD.
Yeah.
So the drive to want to be successful and have like that to never work for anyone else did come from my mum and dad, because man, like my mum, she was like a pastry chef. She was a makeup artist for 10 years. Like I remember watching her leave at like 3 a.m. She was working on like Peter Pan, Ghost Ship. Like to be to be one of the best makeup artists in Australia by a long shot. Her prosthetics and the way that she would, do those before CGI was such a massive thing, they would have to do a lot of it themselves. So, to see the work that she did, I definitely get my work ethic from her. She literally like got flown to Dubai to teach them how to airbrush makeup on, because you can't use brushes on 4K, on high def. All their makeup's airbrushed and stuff. So, to have that, I used to, and that's why I love cooking so much, because I used to watch her for hours in the kitchen cook, when she had the restaurant. So, to watch someone growing up as powerful as my mum, just to step into so much, with 3 boys and my dad working his ass off with multiple car yards and stuff, and to change careers and do all the things she did, it's kind of why I just have no fear with doing whatever the fuck I want.
Literally. And just, dude.
Like, whatever the fuck I want, I'm doing it. Like, you can't, like 30 years old, go to the mines. You'll never get a mining apprenticeship with BHP. You're too old. I was like, literally, hold my fucking beer. And I was actually the last mature age apprentice with BHP. So, like, it's just that relentless momentum to just constantly fucking like achieve.
Do you almost love being told you can't do that?
Oh fuck! Like the best thing you can do is underestimate me, like that. I think, like by far, like tell me I can't do something. I think that comes from my principal telling me that he goes, Christopher, if you get a job as a street sweeper, take it, because it's probably about the best you're gonna get. He told me that right before he kicked me out.
Fuck.
16 years old, and he was like, yeah, make sure like you get it.
Was this in NZ or back here?
No, it was over here.
Yeah. What school did you go to?
I think we should keep. We'll keep the. I can remember the school and the principal's name, because I still.
Yeah, we won't put names into it.
Nah, definitely not. Nah, but I do know that the going rate for a wage of a principal was like 140K.
Yeah, it's a good coin.
Yeah, it was, and like I just, for me, I don't really compare myself to how much he was on, but I know like, with the mindset and the attitude I've got and the qualifications, I just fucking refuse to allow that to restrict me. One of my favourite sayings, like, because having ADHD and, like being diagnosed at 13 and now being like 40, like I don't need to go to a doctor. I've read all 30 symptoms of ADHD and I've got all fucking 40 of them. Like there's no fucking like, I don't care what you're going on about. Like I know, and to have the superpower of it, to literally, once I apply it, like Christian, my business partner, obviously, he is my Ritalin. I don't need to take Ritalin. I've got him. Like, I ring him up, tell him like 10 ideas. He goes, they're all fucking shit. And I'm like, okay. Go back to the drawing board.
But it's good then, because you're pumping out, say, 100 ideas a week. You're going to get 1 or 2. Okay. 100 ideas a day.
I don't know. It's just, we have like 40,000 like memories and thoughts a second,
Exactly.
But there is, but it's like.
Plus, way more information these days, considering these bloody phones and everything that's getting pumped into our heads. So, what would you say to anyone? Because I'm sure there's plenty of people listening that have the exact same thing going on. What are some things that have helped you embrace it as a superpower?
Stop drinking. I know for a fact that if you're taking drugs, you are waking up on a Monday morning restricted by your own anxiety and lack of ambition, knowing you can do it, but you're restricted by the claustrophobic effect of what you did to yourself on the weekend because you've got no money, because you thought you were a smart motherfucker, because you're too nice, and you're buying everyone else drinks, and that's cost you your food for the week, and that's got your anxiety through the roof. Stop giving up. Give up drugs. Like, stop trying to cope with anything outside from either you're getting it from an outside source or you're buying it yourself or you're getting it from a mate. Stop it. Don't have high sugar foods in the morning. Wake up, massive glass of water, and really kind of, I will say, and as I'm sure you're going to love this, like, at least do the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 breath work. I don't do it every day. I'm not religious with it, but it's like every 1 or 2 days, it's just like I need that factory reset where I drop into my space and I allow the gratitude that I suppress from others in, because with ADHD, you really do push away compliments and celebrations and stuff. Step into the fact that you are going to take your shoes off at the front door. You are going to put the drying on, and you're going to put the dishwasher on, and you're going to leave the washing on the bench for a week. That's okay. You're going to leave the washing in the dryer for a couple of days too, but just understand, like, we are high functioning in the real world. Like, I'm fucking good at my job. I am a very, very clean, hygienic person, but I've got a washing pile that serves me no dopamine hit to do it, so I fucking put it to the side. Like, I don't make excuses. I'm not lazy, not by a fucking long shot. No. But I can tell you right now, there's a load of washing in the dryer. There's a load of washing in the washing machine. There's a washing pile there, and my dishwasher's full. All clean or being cleaned, but because there's no, like, as ADD, we crave that, like, yes, I fucking did it. And I'm sure if I did my washing, I'd be like, fuck, I did it. But right now, I'm looking at it going, I'll just like Russian roulette for a towel on my cat's paw.
Fuck, maybe I've got ADHD. It's
yeah. I think
I feel like there's a bit of a form of it within everything, right? And again, there's labels and boxes that we can be put into, but it's a series of symptoms that you've clearly lived with and continue to live with, which you allow to empower yourself to do incredible things and be an incredible person.
Yeah, thank you. And it's there is, like, I would say, especially with ADHD, choose your partners wisely. Because for me, being a fixer, I've had to bring into my life, do you want, like, solutions or support on this? And I have to ask straight away, because as someone with ADD, like, I refuse to be labelled with it because I'm not medicated for it, but if that's how we get around so people know what we're talking about, that's what it is. Partners won't understand you if they don't understand themselves, in the regard of they could have OCD and they will never understand you. They won't understand, like, and to give you an example, I spoke about, like, I'll walk in the door, I'll take my pants off, put them on the bench, I'll put all the food on that I've just bought, I'll put the wet food away, like the cold food away, I'll start unstacking the dishwasher, I'll put the washing on, I'll take the washing out of the dryer, swap it over, half clean the bench in the bathroom, I'll go make the bed a bit, and I'll sit on the couch, literally switch on the TV, and an hour will go by, I'm like, fuck, thank Christ I did all those jobs. None of the dry food's been put away, my pants are still on the bench, the washing machine's not on, the dryer's not on, everything's good, the bed's half made, and, like, the bench is half wiped and the rag's still wet. And my head, I'm like, fuck, I'm glad I do that work, and I get up, I'm like, damn it.
Fuck, yeah, it's happening again.
And that's kind of like where it goes, but then I spend a bit of time, but writing lists has been a thing too, but I don't know, I've got lists for lists, and I've got reminders that remind me to remind myself, and I still fucking can't remember.
Dude, you're actually nailing it for a lot of things that I go through, literally.
But I think, like, every man is on the spectrum, I believe. Like, I think that there is a certain point where, like, we are on it, and then, you know, we, like, get called all these, like, you know, derogatory names, like, you know, oh, it's a male thing. Yeah, but it's
just a dumb male.
It's just a dumb male, like, or is it that whole, you know, perspective, like, a little bit on the spectrum, like, you always leave your socks there. It's like, yeah, well, disassociate from it. That's kind of what I do. And for me, like, I've literally, in relationships, been made to feel so tiny and so demoralized that what I'm doing is just the worst thing in the world. And because I really am empathetic, and a good friend of mine says, you're like Melbourne, you're like 4 seasons in one day. But I am, and I'm at peace with that, because now stepping away from drugs and alcohol, like I fucking am a really emotionally caring guy that just will feel all the feels in any given environment, and I don't give a fuck. Like, I will sit with anyone. I don't care if they're homeless or they've whatever they drive or however they drive or whatever's going on for them. I will sit with them and I will listen and I will go through all of it with them. And I'm so okay with that. And it's like, I'm not going to run from that anymore, because for years I like thought that, oh, you just give too much for everyone. You just do this, you do that. I'm like, and I listen to the narrative of like, yeah, you know what? That's fucking me. And I'm fucking here for that.
I like that you can, as you said, if that is you and you like that about you and you own that and it doesn't take away from anything else you're doing, fucking awesome. You know, like I'm the same, bro. I've been caught in that space where, especially with what I do, I was saying to Jay before, I'll get caught up with, I don't really talk much about it because I don't feel the need to, but in saying that, if by me not talking about it, it doesn't inspire someone else, where I'll take the time, even though I don't have the time, if someone messages me knowing what I do, like, hey, Trav, I'm really struggling. Can I get on a phone call with you? And I'll take the call. And I'll be on the call for 2 hours, helping them however I can, knowing that 2 hours I set aside for myself to do my shit. So again, I put myself second.
That's what I loved about that Monday when I tried to contact you and you just sent me that message. I was like, hey, mate, Monday's my flow day. This is what I do. This is how it plays out for me. And I was just like, I love a fucking good boundary.
And if it's said in a kind way, it wasn't like, fuck off, I'm not taking calls today. It was like... I
mean, I'm happy to receive, because I love you so much. I'm happy to receive it however you send it, but... You know,
or just like Nev just doesn't respond. Like, you'll try calling him like 6 times in a week.
Motherfucker leaves you on read.
But you know what he's doing. You just know. Like, you know, he's just, I'm too busy. Which is cool. Like, he is building a fucking empire for him and his family and everyone around him. Like, he supports, I don't know how many employees he's got.
Yeah, Nev is, how do I explain Nev to me?
We love you, Nev.
He just like, him and I are much the same as you and I. We get in a flow state, and the way that we articulate off each other, it's just, you know, I've known him for over 10 years, and you know, he came down for my 40th on Saturday, and I think the amount of time, the actual amount of time I've spent with Nev in person is like under 4 days, but the amount of time on the phone. It's like every time we talk, we just kick off, and the way that, you know, he has allowed, because he is obviously, let me start that again. He is a mentor to me, and he knows he is, but he's also a fucking good friend, and the way that he speaks to me and knows, because he's got ADD.
Oh, for sure.
I don't give a fuck what anyone says, but he has, I don't know if he knows
Our whole crew, Foxy.
Foxy. I can give him for sure.
Shout out to Foxy, the man.
Yeah, my man. And he's like, you know, if we were talking about people, the first conversation, like, we clicked harder than an airplane seatbelt. He seriously, he, you know, we talk on the phone, and it's like we've been mates for as long as we can remember, and I'll talk to him, and he's like, man, are you serious? I literally I'm going through the same shit, you know, so I'm really looking forward to being a part of and watching his journey and him unfold as a man, especially because mining is such a toxic environment for men that want to grow.
Dude, to see him growing through that is powerful. And I tell him this every time we chat, man. It's like, Foxy, you're literally going against the fucking grain in the grainiest place you could be. So, which is powerful, man, to know that what we're doing, especially with Heart-Led Warriors, like, that's the sort of space we want to get into, and there's opportunities for us to do so, which is awesome. And this is where the change happens. But I've been talking to men lately, people that do men's work, and I'm like, it's fucking hard work. It's not called men's work for no reason. Like, it's literally to get the men into the retreats, to the group training, to the one-on-one, to even doing the one-on-one, man. Like, there's so much wounding and suppression that, and because I believe good coaching is literally supporting, asking the questions for them to be empowered to do it themselves. We're not there to do it for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's knowing that some men just might not have the wherewithal to actually take the actions to make the changes, even though they've got a coach or a mentor, etc. Right?
Yeah, just what came up for me then, I remember I was lying on the couch and I think I'd just been through another relationship where I know I was the cause and like the catalyst. And I was just lying on the couch. I'm like, man, what the fuck is going on? Like, why am I doing the same shit? Like, I was calling the girls crazy. And then I remember seeing something saying, if they're all crazy and the one person that's calling them crazy is you, guess what, motherfucker? Like, it's not them. It's you. And so obviously that hit me like a ton of bricks. And yeah, just like you say, with that opening up and to talk into that, when I started a men's, it was actually called Old Bull, Young Bull, the drive to bring awareness to, starting the chat, because it's all good and well to have all these media-driven outlets to say start the chat, but what happens when the chat starts? Where do you go from there? Like, hey bro, how you feeling? Bro, I'm feeling so shit. Like, whoa, because I've been 10 kilometers underground when I was doing underground coal mining in some of the harshest conditions on the planet, literally talking to a 60-year-old man in tears because his wife's leaving him because he's got all these things going on. And that's when I knew myself I had to start this page. And obviously I've kind of let it idle for a bit because there was a scare there with, a few things I had to push to like a psychologist and then things like that for some men on the page. And I couldn't articulate my way because it was starting to get too heavy.
Yep.
There were things coming out for men that I didn't know. I can give out numbers to Helpline, to
which is great. Like, and I believe that's the best way that we work with this stuff. It's like there's so many coaches coming into the game, which a lot of people, they cop a lot of shit from, say, psychologists, psychiatrists, counsellors, etc., who are trained in university, TAFE, whatever it might be. They've got so much hate for the coaching industry, which I can kind of see because there are some dodgy coaches out there, but there's also some dodgy psychologists, right? Dodgy doctors. It's in everywhere. But we can work together as one because we're all on the same fucking mission to help people. So why is it why do you believe there's such a big discrepancy between the two?
I think for a start, you can go, no disrespect to people that do it, you can go from being an everyday human, go and do an NLP course or do all the work and under a year, go straight out and start charging whatever you feel the right amount of money is for your environment, and that's you accordingly. You've got someone who's a therapist or a psychologist, and they've done like 4, 5, 6, 7 years of this hard slog, and I think there needs to be a line drawn in the sand where a good coach that understands someone's got psychological problems that they cannot handle will inadvertently have a hotline of therapists or psychologists,
support network
that they know that can deal with particular things that come up. Because if someone's got massive amounts of childhood trauma, well, then you wouldn't go and send them to a relationship therapist. But you can have the relationship therapist there for the people that say, I'm arguing with my wife, like, God forbid he's cheated, she's forgiven me, we don't know how to work through it. I mean, I know for a fact that 2 coaches on the top of my head now that would articulate that beautifully. But for me, if I didn't know them, I would be like, here's a number to this human in Brisbane. She is hard to get into, but she will save your shit. So I think, and to answer your question, I think it's just that, the time spent, and it would be quite frustrating to know that someone could do that so quickly when someone spent so much time in a passionate world that they love for so long. Does that answer your question? I kind of get it.
Yeah, no, it's the general consensus of what that is. So it's like 100% agree, because there are some people that may step into this game that aren't quite ready, right? So if you got someone who's got severe PTSD or PTS, you probably wouldn't work with them. You're probably going to send them to some psychologist or something like that. Although the biggest thing is, though, the biggest letdown within that professional space is that from what I've seen in a personal experience, like I've seen great psychologists in the past, but I've found also that there's a space where there's people that are kept in their shit for years on end. Whereas what we might do, or myself, I'll talk about myself here, and what I do is like it's a focus on where do we go, letting go of the stories to move forward. So I don't necessarily work on all the stuff in the past. We might touch on it to help understand ourselves a little bit better, but it's more about where you're at now, where you're presently, where do you want to go, what's the life you want to create, purely because that's what I've done. So I'm teaching what I've done, and what I have is like a life I fucking love and live. It's freedom. A lot of people want that. So it's like being able to work in two spaces coherently, have the abilities to do so. And I also believe that a lot of the issues come from, which this is probably in every industry, right? Where, say you got two football coaches. Do you want to be coached by the one that's played 30 years of football, or the one that just learned from university? Do you want to work with someone who's dealt with 15 years of trauma and gotten through it, or someone who read it from a book? You know, like it's such a hard thing, because I believe both have their places, right? Because not everyone has to have had gone through that shit to be able to do something, but which one is going to work best for you, kind of thing.
I guess that's why they call all of the clinics practices.
Yeah. Yes, dude. I've been to doctors before that are fucking Googling my symptoms, right?
Oh,
so
fuck.
and I can understand that some of them are still learning too, but you still got to question like what is being taught within these professional industries at these universities, etc., that are potentially hundreds of years old. I know for a fact from what I've seen and what I've read. Okay, let's not say it's a fact. From what I've seen and read,
in my opinion,
I've seen that they're still stating dietary requirements that are fucking 60 years old. There's doctors that don't even know what a fucking macro is or a micronutrient, right? So it's like, how can you say that you must do this because this is what we're told to do? It's just more so asking the question on maybe there's an alternative happening right now. There's a holistic approach to life. And if you want to go down that path, then cool, if that works. Because there's no need to sit here and say one thing works and one thing doesn't. It's just what works for you, right?
Oh, and like you're bang on. There's that, like, who gives a fuck where you're getting the help? But the key word there is getting, so long as you're getting help. Like, if you speak to someone, like, I'll go back, like, when I spoke to Jay about, you know, like amend what was going on and all the things. I think like one of the things is, you go, bro, you'll fucking love it, you know, and that is the start of it. And I don't, not for 1 second in any of the things I've stepped into, have I not learnt something about myself to set myself free from things that I myself was holding myself back from. I've seen psychologists, you know, I've sat for hours with a therapist, only, you know, like you say, and there's coaches that will keep you in your bullshit much the same as a therapist will. And if you are finding that you're not stepping out of the bullshit, but you're still paying money for it, and the frustration of paying for it is starting to get in the way, you're not going anywhere but except your bank balance.
Yeah.
You know, like I know, I'll step into it, like I got more out of your retreat from a psychological standpoint than sitting there with someone constantly saying, how'd that make you feel? Because, I mean, I'm a kinesthetic learner. So I learn basically off, like, I see, I can, I do. And so as we'll go back to that video where you literally on your own self saw that I needed a little bit more of a push and you yelled at me, and there's not one person of the thousands of views that have seen that video can say that they saw when you yelled, my face changes, and that's when that comes up for me. And that in that environment, you would never get a psychologist or a therapist putting you in that space because A, that's not what they're trained for, and they don't have that, you know, I forget what the words that you guys use, you know, like you kind of just go off instinct.
It's intuition. So for me, it's an intuitive pull, man. I just have this weird download into my gut and my heart. I have it all the time, even online. I had a client the other day and we went through ECT. So we were sort of talking about some stuff that was sort of still around with him for around his mum. And by the end of it, I just felt this like, bro, we need to do a perceptual positions, which is what we did with you at the retreat, where you stand there and talk to your dad, then you stand in as your dad and talk to you, and then someone mutual in that relationship. So we did that. He fucking basically healed this relationship with his mum when she wasn't even there, and then went and drove to see her to say I love you. Because he realised he hadn't said I love you for many years because he was craving that from her. But realised that if he creates this internal world, it's represented externally. So, and that was just, I just felt it. I was like, man, this is what needs to happen right now. Let's use this energy. And that's the sort of stuff I see missing with the professionals, you know, like, but as we've just said, bro, like I'm by no means running anyone down. Like I've got mad love for anyone that's trying to help people. Right. And just unfortunately we have some shit ones and some good ones.
Oh, I mean, it's not even in the psychological standpoint, you know, like trades, you know, like it's prevalent everywhere. You know, it's just we're on the topic of it now. Like you get your like plumbing handyman versus the actual professional plumber. Like you're gonna have imbalances in quality of work and things like that. And you know, because in the same way trades are, sparkies, plumbers, builders, no one is regulated in regards to how much they charge. And it's, you know, so you can say you're, you know, exhibit A, the best of the best, and charge accordingly, and you're, until the work's done, and only can you see what you've fucked up. And that coincides with the people of being in that, like, and how'd that make you feel? And how'd that make you feel? And it's like, I don't really want to feel it. I actually want to, like, grab it by the throat. And you know, and that's what I love about the work itself is, as I said earlier, the work itself is unenjoyable as life is, but only until that same, like, event, like I said about lying on the couch and you stepping into it and, you know, like, why am I doing the same shit with women? What is this same thing that keeps coming up for me? Why am I self-sabotaging? Why am I, you know, like, I knew, like, subconsciously, when you get told not to do something, that is that person's boundary. It's not they have to say, this is my boundary for you to say it's a fucking boundary. So when I, like, would do something toxic, like go out, bender for 3 or 4 days, again, was only supposed to go out for one, and now it's Sunday at 4 a.m. in the morning, and I'm tails between my legs, and I'm, like, just, like, knowing, and it's like, you're going to cop it. Again, like, toxic bullshit, stepping into the work. Why? Okay, so you know why you're doing this now. Probably need to be a bit more vulnerable, a little less ego. You don't have to be the one that out-parties, out-drinks, out-drugs everyone. Like, there's no point to do that. It doesn't help me. I don't feel good about it. It doesn't serve me. You know, and again, I'll go back to Wah. Like, I went and saw Wah, I think it was like 2 years ago. I just went down to the lagoon at Talibudra, and I was like, bro, how do you have so much energy? Like, you just radiate it. And he looked at me, and I was, like, probably still fucked up. And he said, bro, have you ever given your spirit a chance to see what it could be like away from what drugs and alcohol are doing to you? And much the same as that, like, gravity ball smashing through 10 layers of the floors, it hit me, like, so hard. And that was when I had stepped into the first King Warrior program, and I went 10 days drug and alcohol free. And then it was 42 days of choosing self, which, again, like, so much comes up for you in that. But in that 52 days, I, like, saw, and Wah specifically gave me, write 20 things because of, like, that is valid about me, and I had to read it every morning, and it was on the mirror, so I, like, struggled to get through them, and I was just like, I don't know what I'm valid about. I don't even know what the fuck. I actually Googled what is valid, because I was just like, for me, valid's only been the expiry date on food. Nah, it's good for a couple of days. It's like, you know, I wrote like 20 things down, and like, it was actually by like it was like the 20 or the 20, around the halfway mark, I was like, motherfucker, like, I am valid. Like, man, I'm a good plumber. I'm such a good friend. Like, I know. And I was like, so why do I feel the need to get so fucked up all the time? And anyway, obviously my coping mechanisms of dealing with whatever was coming out for me. And I was like, I went, like, whole of last year, I went like probably 6 or 7 times where I got fucked up. And each time I was just like, nah, not into it. Like, I just don't feel like this is doing the right thing. And then, like, I think it was early December 2022, I was just like, that's it. Like, just literally, it's like, like the Truman Show, like, if I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And I close the door, and everyone's like, it's only been a month. But in my heart, I'm too stubborn to quit and too driven to fail.
Too stubborn to quit and too driven to fail. And I believe you, bro. Like, what are you just forever now, or is it just like a certain time?
I don't know. Like, I did the lip scrunch in that sense of myself. I'll pick up on that cue. It's just not serving me now. And the way that I am and the way that, like all my businesses are going, are very, very like young in their age, they're going really well. My actual work, my quoting is on the higher end, but my work output, and I got some really good feedback. Like, they rang fact check and they're like, oh, his quote's pretty high. But the lady actually said, they just rang me, and I said, no, but your work is excellent and your communication skills are fire.
Hey.
So for me, had that been a Monday morning when I was stuck in that come down of anxiousness, because I've had so much of a dopamine release, now my dopamine's regulated, I am sitting in this world of like, literally just like, fuck yes, like quarter to 4, I am up. Quarter to 4, I am up, and 4 a.m. I am on, and my lists are done, and by 5 o'clock, I am out, and I'm at the gym, and I'm fucking shit up. And I just like, I'm like, everyone's asked me like, oh man, you're 40 years old, like, you look good for 40. And I'm like, yeah, I fucking do, because I go to the gym 5 days a week. I sauna, I have to stay out of like 15 minutes each side, quick roast, I'm done out of the sun,
Yeah. And you eat a crazy amount of food too. Dude, how many calories are you taking in right now?
not a hell of a lot. I'm actually like with the coach at the moment, because